History is written by the victors. Or is it? I started to research for this video with the intention to just list different scenarios where history shows a bias towards the winning side in conflict. However, I felt as I was researching that I was going down a rabbit hole, or an iceberg, getting deeper and deeper into the phrase and questioning more and more if it had any validity at all. At the top, we have pretty surface level events from history that seem to have been written only from the point of view of the winner. Deeper, we have the origin of the phrase, attributed to Napoleon sometimes and Churchill others, as well as other interpretations of the phrase, such as the role of who is literate in writing history. Finally, we have the deepest level, where we can question if this phrase is even valid, and potential events where the losers of history have written it. There is no purer example of the victors writing history than in an ancient world where a new ruler or conqueror came along and physically destroyed the history of what came before. In 221 BC, Huang united China and became emperor, at which point his chancellor Li Si suggested the following: I, your servant, propose that all historian records, other than those of queens, be burnt, except the academics whose duty includes possessing books. If anyone under heaven has copies of the Shijing, the Shijing, or the writings of the 100 schools of philosophy, they shall deliver the books to the governor or the commandant for burning. Anyone who dares discuss the Shijing or the classic history shall be publicly executed. Anyone who uses history to criticize the present shall have his family executed. This book burning included anything considered politically dangerous, poetry, philosophy, and historical records from the other states. Huang was also accounted to have overseen the live burial of 460 scholars who were potentially subversive, quelling intellectual diversity in the now united China. Some elements of the historical record suffered one of the greatest losses in the ancient world. This same pattern of destroying the history of the loser can be seen later in the name of religious domination. In 1562, the Spanish bishop Diego de Landa ordered the burning of Mayan religious and historical books as an act of faith. The bishop said that the books contained the lies of the devil, and as such tried to erase the memory of the Mayan gods, beliefs, and their own history. Today, only 4 Mayan Codexes exist. These examples take the quote literally, the winners literally destroying the historical record of those they have conquered. However, we can take the phrase metaphorically as well. The brutal colonization of North America and genocidal actions against the Native Americans is well documented. The population decline of North America from 8 million in 1492 to 4 million in 1776 can be attributed to European diseases and plagues such as influenza, but also to massacres, forced removal, and warfare with the European colonizers. And yet, 400 years of mistreatment of the Native American people is celebrated yearly in the holiday of Thanksgiving, a tiny snapshot of the kind colonizers and Native Americans coming together in one moment of peace between the years of devastation. This is the history that the winners have written. To start off section 2, we have the origin of the phrase. Napoleon is often credited with saying history is written by the victors, or the much more cool, what is history but a fable agreed upon? However, he proved himself slightly wrong by writing several books of history while on the island of St. Helena from the point of view of himself, the loser in the wars against the coalition army. Also attributed with the quote is Churchill, in this case the winner after World War II. Humorously, Churchill is trying to coin a phrase that he did not say, history is written by the winners, in some way proving it to be correct. Churchill is actually an example of the winners writing history himself as, under his leadership, England and the Allies beat the Nazis. Churchill to this day is often seen as a virtuous man, or at least one of great character, but before the war he was an opportunist and a racist, frequently switching between the Liberal and Conservative parties depending on which gave him more power. He was also a major supporter of fascism, praising Mussolini as using fascism to cure the plague of communism. He was critical of Gandhi and India's independence movement, not to mention his support and service in the bloody wars against the Boers, and in the Second Boer War, which included putting tens of thousands of Boer women and children in concentration camps. Yet, Churchill was a hero. Yes? No? Maybe? But he is definitely a winner. Now let's look at the case of Nero, widely known as the epitome of evil, the Antichrist. How true is this perception of him? Well, here are the claims from Suetonius. It was said that life with his first wife Octavia had bored him, and she failed to bear children. After several instances of Nero trying to strangle his wife, he divorced and had her exiled, an act which made him unpopular, so much so that he executed Octavia on the fake charge of adultery. His second wife Poppaea, whom he married 12 days after Octavia's death, complained about him coming home late from the races, and he kicked her to death in her pregnant belly. Suetonius said that Nero summoned an audience of 5,000 people to clap for him in different styles of applause, that at night he donned a cloak and wandered the streets to stab drunk men laying in the gutters. It was so widely known that he killed his mother Agrippa that a popular and true saying went, "Count the numerical values of the letters in Nero's name and in murdered his mother. You will find their sum is the same." These many crimes Nero committed were comically evil and often mixed with myth. For example, when his mother was killed by Nero's men, she supposedly said to stab her in her stomach where the monster was born. Yet this was a scene from a contemporary play at the time. This raises the question of whether such history is written by his rivals, the many elites of society who he wronged. There are conflicting accounts that Nero was loved by the more common people. After all, he gave mind to the lower artist class of society, attending and hosting such art events. And some policies can be seen as for the common man, such as decreasing taxes for individuals and making it legal for slaves to make complaints about their masters, which is pretty cool. Perhaps then, the accounts of Nero's crimes are exaggerated by the elites in society, those who assassinated him, who were literate, those who won. After all, the common people did not write the histories of Nero. The ones who did later were often loyal to the new family of emperors and would profit from the slandering of Nero's rule. Until lions learn to write, every story will glorify the hunter. The literacy of a people's or the language difference of another is significant. For example, barbarians are named from the Greek barbaros, as they thought when foreigners spoke, it just sounded like bar 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 bar. This language barrier leads often to the false representation of barbarians as evil and uncivilized in ancient Greece and Rome. Finally, where in history can we see losers writing it? Well, one of the most significant conflicts of the ancient world was the Peloponnesian War between Sparta and Athens in 431 to 404 BC. A highly important text about the war came from Thucydides in his History of the Peloponnesian War. He is dubbed the father of scientific history and also an Athenian general, the side that lost. So, is this an example of the losers writing history? Well, yes. At this deepest level of the iceberg, I want to take a second to realize the use of the phrase, history is written by the victors. It is sometimes literally true, such as in examples where people's history was literally destroyed by an invader or a colonizer. However, it can be also used more metaphorically, that a hegemonic power controls the narrative on certain topics. Those who are ruling class, or those who are literate, controls this narrative. However, Thucydides' scientific history, and most history by serious scholars, shows a dedicated effort to document the events of history in a scientific way. This history could be considered the real history, and is out there for anyone to read if interested, to find out what really happened. Just a quick note at the end, if you've watched this far, I appreciate it. This is my first time making anything YouTube, and I'm very much learning the ropes. Consider subscribing, and have a wonderful day.